Well, let's dive into your tip of the week, Eric. And we were kind of talking about that low tech unemployment rate, and it kind of factors into your tip of the week here in terms of accommodating how and where your employees work these days.
Thanks, Rich. And yes, it's very timely, tip of the week because it addresses kind of this post-pandemic expectation or lack of alignment in expectation of employers and employees in regards to the getting back to work, right? So we've gone from the work from home dynamic full time in many cases to now these employers are requiring folks to be back in the office. And for many MSPs, Rich, that's where we would like everyone to be, is in a central location, because this is how we learn from each other. We have the service department or the knock in a central location, and this is how we train each other, this cross training, and just learning, like tapping your colleague on the shoulder saying, hey, I've got this interesting ticket, have you seen anything like this? And there's this immediate kind of close interaction and relationship. And nowadays, the challenge becomes, you know, in order to bring more folks onto the team, this idea of, we'd like to work sometimes remotely and sometimes we'll come into the office, things like that. And I think that's an adjustment that a lot of businesses as well as MSPs are having to make to continue to grow. And in order to offer these flexible work arrangements, there has to be some framework around, managing that balance. What are you missing from that internal, everybody in the office all the time, as opposed to some folks being remote all the time or remote part-time. I'm working with a lot of MSPs where they're hiring folks that are completely remote in other locations or other countries even, right? So we've always had some of that outsourced type of opportunity for MSPs, Rich, but for the core team that we've come to expect to be in the office all the time, now they're getting poached by other competitors that are offering some of this flex work type of relationship. And it's important, I think, for MSPs to realize that that is a benefit that may allow you to hire more folks or to keep existing folks. It may be one of the things that can, prevent an MSP's technical or sales staff from leaving to a competitor's because they're offering some of this. So offering flexible work arrangements can help not only attract new talent, but also retain some of your talent. So, you know, investigate these opportunities and offer it in a way that doesn't, denigrate that ability for the team to feel like it's part of the team, and put in place other measures to help these folks that are remote, you know, feel as if they are an integral part of the team. And I think that's something that a lot of MSPs are, struggling with in some cases. Some of them have figured it out. But, if you ask me directly, Rich, what my preference would be if I'm building an MSP, if I'm building a knock and a service desk, my preference would be to have everybody at the location. But barring that, facing this new reality and these new challenges of, again, attracting and retaining top talent, I would be forced to adjust my perspective on that and to build, an opportunity for some flexible work arrangements, just to remain competitive, in my industry.
Yeah, I certainly know, and MSPs who insist that everybody be in the office 5 days a week. I think that's harder and harder to do right now in this labor market right now. I mean, there are people I know who have pulled that off successfully, but it's difficult. Conversely, we both know MSPs who are 100% remote, and they can be very successful with that model too. That poses some interesting challenges around culture and connectedness. And there's some trade-off that you're making there in terms of that interaction among the techs and the increased efficiency that can result from them sharing ideas and so on and so forth. So I mean, I think the sweet spot increasingly is in between, and this is true beyond the tech industry, beyond MSPs. We're seeing this across the business landscape, that hybrid sort of work arrangement where, and people are kind of debating, shit, is it 3 days a week, 4 days a week, but having people in the office part of the week and then allowing them maybe on Mondays and Fridays to work remotely seems to be where a majority of people are settling. And the nice thing about that for an MSP is that you do at least have, if you adopt that kind of arrangement, you do at least have those few days a week where people are seeing each other, interacting with each other face to face. You have that opportunity to build and maintain a culture. You don't have to kind of figure out how to do all that virtually. And by and large, when I look at survey numbers on this, which I do periodically, most employees out there, they don't like it when they're required to be in the office 100% of the time, but that kind of 3 days a week, a lot of them will put up with. So you're probably not missing out on recruitment and retention as much with that.
Right. And this wasn't the thing that it is today before COVID. So, this has been, we've seen a lot of change as a result of us all going through, time of COVID, let's say. And it requires us to think differently about how we manage our teams, how we hold them accountable. Like, what platforms do we now have to really leverage or put into place to make sure that we maintain that connectivity? Slack channels, teams, right? How do we manage and maintain that? How do we measure KPIs? How do we measure performance in a more, objective manner? Because they're not in the office as much, and really, managing via performance. So I think there's some benefits to to being forced to adopt some of these new kind of flexible work requirements, along with some of the challenges.
So managing a hybrid workforce, managing vendor relationships, big topics that we're not going to completely resolve on a podcast like this, but important issues for people to be thinking about and sharing strategies about.